State law requires that cities and counties provide for solid waste services as part of an integrated waste management plan, which includes waste reduction and recycling activities, as well as the safe disposal of non-recyclable materials such as hazardous waste and electronic waste. Each city and county enters into exclusive franchise agreements for solid waste collection and other services, such as green waste, recycling, and bulky item pickups, with their waste collection company. And each jurisdiction's franchise agreement is unique. Solid waste collection companies operating in Humboldt include Humboldt Sanitation, Recology, and Tom's Trash. Humboldt Sanitation owns and operates a private transfer station in McKinleyville, and Recology owns and operates a private transfer station in Fortuna, and they manage the Redway transfer station under a contract with the County of Humboldt. These three transfer stations receive materials under state, tribal, and federal contracts, the City of Fortuna and Trinidad, and other self-hauled material, and that tonnage is excluded from HWMA's flow control. HWMA owns and operates the Hawthorne Street Transfer Station, which includes the tip floor, Eureka Recycling Center, and the Household Hazardous Waste Facility. Member agencies direct their franchise solid waste haulers to the Hawthorne Street facility or to one of HWMA's contracted satellite facilities in order to dispose of our members' solid waste and their curbside collected recyclables. In addition to franchise material received at Hawthorne Street, the general public also disposes of their material at our transfer station. Each jurisdiction negotiates a franchise agreement with a commercial garbage hauler for the curbside collection of solid waste and other services such as bulky item pickup, recyclables, and other services. HWMA does not operate any curbside collection services. All material is brought to our transfer station. Franchise and self-haulers deliver about 233 tons of trash per day to HWMA for a total of 85,000 tons of waste each year. Additionally, HWMA accepts recyclables, hazardous waste, green waste, and other materials such as carpets, tires, and mattresses. Solid waste is loaded into semi-truck trailers, which then transport the waste to the Dry Creek landfill located near Medford, Oregon. An average of 10 semi-trucks per day are dispatched for the 204-mile trip one way to dispose of our waste. The Dry Creek landfill opened in 1974 and is a fully permitted municipal solid waste landfill. Waste is disposed into cells that are designed and engineered using a liner system that includes layers of 60mm thick textured HDPE material, low permeability soil, and gas and leachate collection and removal systems. Each constructed line cell has approximately a 3-year capacity and costs about $380,000 per acre to construct. When a cell reaches capacity, it is covered with a system similar to the liner, and it costs approximately $350,000 per acre to close. The Dry Creek landfill accepts waste from several areas in Oregon, including Coos, Curry, Josephine, Jackson, and Klamath counties, as well as material which is generated from California counties, including Humboldt, Del Norte, and Siskiyou. At current disposal volumes, the landfill has an expected lifetime of about 100 years. The Dry Creek landfill is a regional facility with an active methane gas collection and control system. This gas-to-energy plant runs on the methane generated from the landfill and generates enough electricity to power over 3,200 homes 24/7. With the purchase of the Cummings Road landfill in 1999, HWMA is responsible for closure and 30 years post-closure monitoring of the Cummings Road landfill. Many North Coast communities once had their own open-air burn and refuse disposal locations, many of which have been long forgotten. But the Cummings Road landfill was larger in scale and operated for several decades, and there's a responsibility to monitor and maintain this former landfill. The 33-acre Cummings Road landfill was originally a privately owned open-air burn refuse disposal site, which operated from 1933 until 1969. Garbage was open-air burned with residual materials pushed over the sides of the ridge. In 1972, the landfill was permitted as a Class 3 landfill and operated by the privately owned Eureka Garbage Company. Municipal solid waste was received primarily from the communities of Eureka and surrounding areas until the closure of the Arcata and Table Bluff landfills in the mid-1970s. After 1979, municipal solid waste from Fortuna, Ferndale, Rio Dell, and surrounding southern Humboldt communities was transported and disposed at the Cummings Road landfill as well. Faced with diminishing capacity and a corrective action order by the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, the landfill was slated for closure in 1998. In 1999, HWMA was formed, and in addition to the Hawthorne Street Transfer Station, purchased the landfill to develop necessary engineering and design plans, perform the construction cap closure, and is prepared to conduct 30 years of post-closure maintenance and monitoring. Phase 1 construction closure was conducted in the summer of 2012, followed by the Burn Ash project in 2014. In April of 2013, HWMA and Recology were jointly issued a cleanup and abatement order for the cleanup of a 6.4-acre area to the south of the permitted landfill, which contained old burn ash debris that straddled our two adjacent properties. Although neither party was responsible for creating the waste, as property owners, we were responsible for cleaning the property and to ensure the proper disposal of the material. Over 92,000 cubic yards of material was removed at a cost of about $4 million, and that material was then placed into the Phase 2 area of the landfill, and construction was completed in October of 2014. Phase 2 construction closure of the Cummings Road landfill commenced in June of 2015 and was completed in October of 2015. Closure review and certification from the Humboldt County Local Enforcement Agency and the State of California's CalRecycle and North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board was completed in February of 2018. Total spent on the Cummings Road landfill and the burn site was a little over $12 million. And HWMA is now responsible for ongoing maintenance and monitoring of the site. In 1927, the California State Legislature established the first basic regulations for the management of solid waste, and over the decades expanded legislation to address the establishment and regulations for landfills, recycling, and diversion of other related materials. In the mid-1980s, concerns were being raised about landfills in California reaching their disposal capacities, and the state legislature spurred the passage of a key piece of legislation entitled AB 939, the Integrated Waste Management Act of 1989, which established a waste management hierarchy to guide local agencies in the implementation of source reduction, recycling and composting, environmentally safe transformation and land disposal, and mandated a 25% waste diversion mandate. In 2011, the governor approved AB 341, which set a statewide diversion goal of over 75% by 2020 to be achieved through source reduction, mandatory commercial recycling, and continued material diversion. In 2014, the state passed AB 1826, which required mandatory diversion of commercial generated green waste. And in 2016, the governor signed SB 1383, which mandated jurisdictions to implement programs for edible food recovery and organics diversion. To help achieve diversion, HWMA engages in the manual removal of material from the waste stream, collects green waste material, carpet for recycling, and used mattresses and foundations for recovery and recycling. In 2022, HWMA has begun planning efforts to repurpose and improve the Eureka Recycling Center into an organics processing facility. In September 2018, Curbside collected single-stream recyclable materials from HWMA and our participating agencies are processed locally at Recology's Samoa Resource Recovery Center. Humboldt's curbside recycling bins contain an overall average of 26.3% and higher of non-recyclable materials, or garbage. We need your help to keep trash out of recycling bins so that the cost to recover recyclable materials are reduced and improve the quality of our recyclable material. The list of items that can and cannot be recycled may periodically change due to technological advancements and market price fluctuations of recycled goods and raw materials. Fortunately, most of our jurisdictions are using the same sort facility and the same materials are accepted.
So obviously that is a very robust overview of not only HWMA, the activities that it does, but all activities related around municipal solid waste recycling. I would argue that is one of the best ways for new board members or the general public to learn about our waste stream and the ecosystem that currently exists. This will be available on the HWMA's YouTube channel, and I would be more than happy to provide that to any board member or any member of the public that would like it.
Thank you. Yeah, an excellent video, and watching that truck, kind of the slow motion, like at the landfill was very satisfying. I don't know why, but any questions about the presentation or the presentation booklet that was in the packet?
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Jill, for doing that. That was really sobering, though, to see, first of all, how far we have to truck all our trash and how much of it that is. That's a really sobering thought. We need to do better. Also, I need a tour, Eric. I'll get in touch with you because I'd like to.
Yeah, I had the pleasure to give a tour to a Redwood charter school today, although it may not have been the best idea to give a tour and yell about the authority over 32 middle and grade schoolers prior to a board meeting, but it was definitely fun. So they spent about an hour and a half at the authority, seeing what we do and asking questions. And I'm more than happy to give anyone a tour of our operations at any time.
Yeah, let me know what dates and times work best for you, and I'd love to arrange something.
Okay.
Any other questions or thoughts on this presentation? Any members of the public want to make comment or? Okay, we'll close public comment. This is a presentation only. There's no motion associated with it. So
that's correct. It is informational only.
Great. Okay. With that, we will go ahead and close this item and move on to the next. And I'm sure if if members of the public or board members do have questions later on, feel free to reach out to staff about those. We'll go to item number 7, received presentation on regional organics collection and processing and proposed approach and timelines, part 2. All right, I'll turn the floor back over to you, Director Keller-Heckman.
Thank you. Everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so this presentation is a continuation of information presented at the January board meeting. At that time, the board received preliminary tasks and timelines related to organics processing and directed staff to continue to identify necessary engineering and consulting services for board approval and continue the SB 1383 implementation discussion at this February meeting. As a refresher, SB 1383, SB 1383 is not just organics processing. Jurisdictions are also required to develop programs to meet diversion requirements set by the state. Specifically, the jurisdictions establish ordinances for the collection and diversion of materials and enforce compliance on commercial and residential generators. Program in this context means ordinance adoption, establishing administrative tracking and reporting systems, establishing source-separated collection route services, education, procurement, and compliance enforcement mechanisms. Jurisdictions were required to complete ordinance amendments to meet SB 1383 provisions by January 1st of 2022. By January 2024, jurisdictions must take enforcement actions against non-compliant entities. And finally, by January 2025, the target reduction goals must be met at a statewide level. Currently, 5 jurisdictions have completed ordinance revisions and approval. 1 is awaiting the second reading, scheduled for February 21st, and 2 are unknown. As presented in the January presentation, as the proposed organics processing and timeline, this will show the general flow of these milestones by HWMA and member agencies. The JPA amendment and former Eureka Recycling Center facility modifications have both been initiated. Jurisdictions are currently in the process of completing their ordinance amendments, as previously noted. The draft request for proposals is expected to come before this board for approval at their March meeting. This contributes to the jurisdiction's negotiations with their franchise haulers to begin to establish collection services. Once a processing facility is chosen, rate development can begin. This will include HWMA facility and processing rates, franchise collection rates, and final approval of both rates by member agencies. Staff anticipates a phased approach to organics collection and processing, primarily due to the current lack of infrastructure in place. This will not only ensure a smooth transition and adequate time to address unforeseen issues, but observe the quality of the material and assess needed training and education and outreach. Once implemented, ongoing monitoring and management will be necessary, with close coordination with members and their franchise haulers to address contamination and ensure education issues. For associated compliance responsibilities, jurisdictions are allowed to designate a public or a private entity to fulfill certain responsibilities. Jurisdictions may delegate through contracts with haulers or use agreements such as MOUs with other entities, including other jurisdictions and regional entities. But jurisdictions are ultimately responsible for compliance with 1383 and will lead the compliance with ordinance and policy adoptions. The County of Humboldt has taken the lead on a food recovery program and is responsible for capacity planning, with HWMA to lead coordination and securing of organics processing services. Humboldt County staff has prepared a draft RFP for a food recovery program manager and solicited input from not only jurisdictional staff, but HWMA in anticipation that jurisdictions may want to coordinate efforts related to edible food recovery. Jurisdictions will need to identify tier 1 and tier 2 commercial edible food generators, maintain a list of recovery organizations and services, work to expand edible food recovery capacity, provide support to those generators as needed, and address recovery requirements for large events and special venues. Jurisdiction staff is currently coordinating with the county to consolidate some of these responsibilities. To update the immediate tasks presented to this board in January, the draft JPA amendments are completed and will be discussed on a separate agenda item this evening. If approved this evening by the board, the amendments will be circulated to member agency governing boards for their consideration. Construction bid documents are completed pending finalized engineering plans. Jurisdictions are expected to finalize their ordinances in the coming weeks, and their governing bodies will designate flow control of organic material to HWMA. The draft RFP for organics processing will be presented at the March board meeting with input from jurisdiction staff included. Member agencies will then negotiate their franchise haulers, will then negotiate with their franchise haulers for collection services. For collection, education, contamination, and processing tasks, HWMA will modify the former Eureka Recycling Center to receive and pre-process organic materials, issue an RFP for organics processing service, and develop self-haul monitoring and reporting systems. Jurisdictions will need to coordinate with HWMA to identify compliant collection services, implement education and training of commercial and residential generators to ensure we combat contamination, perform monitoring and enforcement, and again, coordinate with HWMA in developing self-haul monitoring and reporting systems. Relating to procurement, HWMA will secure organics processing services and coordinate with local jurisdictions to ensure the availability of organics material for those member agencies. Jurisdictions are responsible for developing a procurement program to include the use of compost or mulch, recycled content paper, and other related items. They are also required to maintain records related to that procurement that may include volume or weight of materials used. For monitoring enforcement, HWMA will perform load checks and monitor for contamination on organics loads accepted and ensure contamination is screened and removed at our facility. This information will then be shared with the collecting haulers and jurisdictions as needed. Jurisdictions will conduct tier 1 and tier 2 food recovery inspections, contract with franchise haulers to conduct route contamination monitoring, conduct annual compliance reviews for commercial generators, ensure education and outreach is given to non-compliant entities, and if necessary, issue notices of violations and potentially assess penalties for non-compliance as needed. Finally, additional responsibilities related to SB 1383 include potentially securing additional staff and contractors for the pre-processing activities, implement record keeping and reporting systems for those activities, ensure records and reports are maintained and shared with jurisdictions as needed, and participate in capacity planning efforts for not just organics processing, but food recovery as well. For jurisdictions, they'll need to submit compliance reports to CalRecycle, manage compliant C&D programs, and implement landscaping ordinances and policies to support compost and mulch as needed. I'd be more than happy to take any questions. I know that was a lot of information, so I'll open it up to the board for questions.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Yes, I do have some questions.
Go right ahead.
Do you have, I see your timeline like in the events of what's to take place. Do you have actual dates set against for those or estimated?
For some of them, yeah, we do have estimate. Obviously, amend and approve the JPA. That is an item on this evening's agenda. We pending approval tonight. That process, we're going to go into that, but it will go to our member agencies, which will have the opportunity to approve or give comments as needed. And we expect that to come back. Potentially the final approval of the restated and amended JPA would be May of 2023. The ERC modifications as well, those draft documents are going to be presented to the board in March, pending any issues with construction, procurement, stuff like that. July, I believe, is the deadline we're looking for to complete those projects. The RFP for services is going to be brought to the board in draft form in March as well. Depending on the received proposals, that could take anywhere from 2 to 4 months, depending on issues with the proposals, stuff like that. The negotiations between the franchise haulers and the member agencies, I could not touch on, as I'm not a part of those negotiations. And then obviously once the RFP has been received, scored, and a successful proposer has been chosen, the processing facility would obviously be available, but an issue would be getting HWMA the material from residents and businesses. So we have a short-term timeline for a lot of the very near goals and objectives, but I would not be able to tell you when full implementation would be or when we can expect those routes to be in place for commercial or residential collection.
So how does this fit in with Cal Recycle? Do they, is that going to be an issue as well, or that's going to interfere?
It'd be difficult for me to comment based on some conversations that each jurisdiction has had with Cal Recycle. Again, I'm not in the room at their CAP meetings, which is their pathway to compliance, basically. I know some Cal Recycle representatives have said the end of this year, late October, or late September, early October is really the last date they can put in their CAP meeting. I've heard other Cal Recycle entities say the first part of 2024. So I think Cal Recycle is still deciding on exactly their pathways as well.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Director Wilson. Other questions from the board? I just have a quick question about some of the jurisdiction requirements, and this may be just a matter of speculation because I realize it's not, your area of responsibility, or our area of responsibility. But, I'm imagining, in order to meet some of those requirements, really our partners, the haulers and, the transfer station will have the actual data, as well as that's, kind of how the rates will flow for, and so I'm imagining that there will have to be, kind of partnerships for the jurisdictions to fulfill some of their responsibilities. Is that your understanding? And if so, are those conversations happening?
Yeah, so for our member agencies, I am at least aware that they are all working together to try and find solutions. I would even go as far to say that regionally, all jurisdictions understand that this is a problem, this is a process, and it's going to need everyone's input and efforts to ensure compliance. I know franchise haulers have been meeting with jurisdictions. They just had a meeting, I believe this week. I know HWMA staff has met with all jurisdictions, and we just held an executive advisory committee that we'll talk about later this evening. We held that meeting on Monday. So everyone involved in this, from the franchise haulers to the jurisdictions to the authority, is working towards ensuring compliance for everybody.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the board? Director Katie, did you have a question? I saw you unmuted.
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I will go ahead and open it up to the public. Any members of the public wish to make comment on this item? Mhm. Cheryl Kelly, are you, oh, okay, your hand is,
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
yes.
I just have a very quick question. I'm on the Trinidad City Council, and I'm wondering if all of the franchise haulers plan to do both residential and commercial pickup, and/or is there a plan for any centralized sort of drop off at HWMA that residential customers could bring their organic waste in at some point? Does that make sense? So what are the options for pickup, and then what are the options for drop off, I guess?
Thanks, Cheryl. And so what we'll do is we'll just take public comment, and then
Okay,
just typically the staff and board don't answer questions in the midst of public comment, but then we may speak to that then at the end. I think that might just
totally understand. Thank you for taking my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to make comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. And, you know, for the benefit of the public, Executive Director Keller Heckman, would you mind answering that question? Thank you.
Yeah, so I cannot speak to the current franchise haulers and what their plans are. Obviously, that will be borne out through your franchise contract negotiations. But the law is pretty specific on the requirements of jurisdictions to provide some sort of organic service to residents and businesses. As far as the authority, we have every plan to make the facility available for drop off. So when we talk about the organics, it's not just food waste. Obviously, that's a big part. That's a part that we're struggling with in this county because of the lack of infrastructure to deal with it. But it still also means organics as far as what we currently take out to West Green Landscape. So your compost material, your trees, your brushes, your shrubs, those materials are going to be accepted in the same general area. So we will absolutely have a self-haul drop-off consolidation area.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask one question. I think that my questions might be more related to when we hear a report from the Executive Advisory Committee, but I just wanted to talk a little bit more about, you know, processing and where things are going to end up. I had heard grant opportunities and whatnot, and that might benefit us. Is that something that we're going to talk about later on in the meeting?
That is correct. Yeah, I mean, you're obviously, you are more than welcome to ask whatever question you want, and I will respond. But we do have an agenda item that may touch on some of that later.
I'll just hold off.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anything else on this item from the board? Okay, and this one also is just not just a report, but there's no action to be taken on this item. Correct. Okay, with that, we will move on to item number 8, receive and consider a preliminary amendments to the HWMA Joint Powers Agreement. That item. So I'll read it in and I'll turn it over to you. Okay. So with this item, we will review, discuss, and approve proposed amendments to HWMA's Joint Powers Agreement. And I will turn it back over to you, Executive Director Keller Heckman.
Thank you. So as noted in the staff report, staff initiated drafting proposed amendments to HWMA's JPA for the purpose of securing flow control of designated source separated materials. This process allowed staff the opportunity to update language and remove old or outdated artifacts. Throughout this process, staff worked with general counsel, and an administrative draft was provided to member agency staff in January. No clarifications or edits were received from member agency staff. For a brief overview of the proposed amendments, the original JPA focused primarily on solid waste management. This included flow control over member agency solid waste only, with key areas focused on the Cumming Road landfill closure, financial obligations, and a non-compete provision focused on recycling services. The proposed amendments include flow control to include designated source separated materials, removal of retired provisions related to the Cummings Road landfill, and cleanup and revisions to reflect current activities and regulations. The revisions and changes can be classified as two distinct sets of changes. One that focuses on universal changes such as formatting, removal of outdated artifacts, improved definitions, and clarifications as necessary. The other set specifically addresses needs or alterations that were needed in the JPA, such as establishment of flow control definition. Additionally, we added a household hazardous waste definition that was lacking, revised additional member criteria, including the timing, and added references to the authority's timberlands as needed. The recommended approval process for these JPA amendments are that the HWA board approve preliminary amendments this evening. This includes introduction of the proposed amendments, approval by a supermajority of board members, and then circulation to member agencies. Next, each governing body will review and consider the amendment, then approve this amendment. Should members raise issues during the deliberation, these concerns should be given to the exec director for review and could potentially result in the need for additional HWMA board revisions. Finally, after confirmation that all members have received, considered, and taken final action and approved the amendments, HWMA will circulate a written instrument for execution by our members. Once signatures have been received, HWMA board will then adopt the amended and restated JPA, and a final executed copy will be distributed to our member agencies. Staff recommendation is that the board review, discuss, and approve proposed JPA amendments, establish the recommended process to amend this agreement, and circulate to HWMA member agencies for consideration and approval. And as always, provide direction as appropriate.
Thank you. And thank you for, this is a significant amount of work. I mean, throughout the agenda, but, just really opening up the JPA agreement. So thank you for all of that work.
Yeah, and obviously General Counsel Diamond and Director Duffy did a heavy lift as well on this. So this was definitely a team effort with, luckily for me, being able to learn a lot about a document that was outdated and severely in need of some revisions.
I can imagine it must have been a team effort for sure. Yeah, and thank you. Any questions?
No, I read through it. It makes, those make sense. I don't really have any questions. Thank you. That's a lot of work.
Go ahead, Director Wilson.
So the only two agencies that we're looking to add is Trinidad and Fortuna.
Those are currently the two entities that are not part of the JPA, although this restatement and amendment does not specifically pertain to their potential addition to the authority. These amendments are more targeted towards ensuring we can get flow control of source separated material, or in this case, the organics material to be collected. While we did include extra provisions that had a better understanding of how member additions are to be handled and the timelines necessary for bringing them onto the authority, that's not the main goal of this restated and amendment.
Right. So this is mainly just for us at this point, existing members.
That is correct. I would say a little bit of both, but the main point is to ensure that we can get flow control of source separated material, in this case, organics. General counsel did take a look at member additions. We did a better job of outlining that process and ensuring that there was a timeline in place for that process to take place.
And I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just kind of bringing some of this stuff up just so that it gets brought out to the public, as well as so that they understand what we're trying to accomplish, where it is. It is no small task of what you put together in the short period of time that you've done it. So, I mean, I greatly appreciate that. And also the help that, like you said, with Director Duffy and our general counsel. But it's important, I know, to our council, as well as I think the local communities need to understand the gravity of what's being done here. That this is a big task demanded by the state, and so I just want that to keep going forward. That this is still no small undertaking. That's really all I have.
Any other? Yeah, and thank you, Director Wilson. Any other questions from members of the board? And I think this is, well, I'm like, is this a statement or question? I'll go ahead and say it and we'll figure it out if it's a statement or a question. One of the things, it was really good for me to take some time and read through this document and kind of realize, right, as all of us on this board, we represent the cities, that are members of the JPA. And so it was really good to kind of think about, our sort of dual responsibilities, right, to the sustaining of HWMA and making sure that HWMA isn't getting into a situation in which, they're going to, whoever the members are going to be on the hook if someone, decides to leave or something like that. And, and then also making sure that we don't, enter in agreements that kind of undermine our fiscal responsibility to our cities. And so, doing this, it was a good kind of learning process for me, and just really thinking about sort of the weight, of the decision making we do here, and sort of just a reminder that we are balancing those two kind of perspectives and responsibilities. I guess that's not a question, but anyway, that was really what came to the forefront for me when I was reading this. So thank you for that opportunity. And with that, any members of the public wish to make comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. And just to make this clear, the next step in the process is then it will come back to each of our respective jurisdictions. So our full, councils and things will have the opportunity to make sure that it does, sit well with the whole council, not only our, sole membership here.
That is correct. There's actually an additional step after that, which is after the member agencies governing bodies vote on this restated and amended JPA, it will come back to the HWMA board for final approval. So that gives the member agencies the opportunity, if they should have revisions or edits or issues with the JPA language, they're going to let myself or HWMA staff know, and it could potentially result in coming back to the HWMA board. Yeah, so there is that opportunity. I would also, additionally, I would say that the administrative draft was distributed to all member agency staff, and we did not receive any edits, clarifications, or anything like that as well.
Thank you. Director Wilson.
I think he just answered my question in his last sentence there that, so all of the executive committee, we're on, he said all the staff has already received this, the amendments. So they're having a chance to look at it. At least.
That is correct. Member agency staff has received an administrative draft. They received it in January prior to this meeting. We requested any edits, changes, comments, questions, concerns to be brought to us before that, so we could take a look at it, make alterations as needed prior to this meeting. So all member agency staff has seen the administrative draft that you're seeing here tonight.
Because I know we've been, the thing that's kind of been dominating most all our meetings is this earthquake thing, and I'm hoping that is settling down in at least for the council meetings, because this should be a substantial discussion topic of the council. At least it should be to do it right, and I've been making them aware that it is an ongoing and, like say, an important step, but thank you that they have that information, and I could touch bases with city manager about this. Thank you.
And thank you, Director Wilson. And just to be clear, if it went out to the jurisdictions, let's say they brought it back and a jurisdiction wanted to make kind of substantive changes at that point, when it came back, it might even need to go back to the jurisdictions again. I mean, probably not, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of concerns that have been raised, but that would be sort of part of the process potentially.
I would probably default to General Counsel Diamond, but I believe the recommendation would be that the HWM board again would approve the revisions and remain it as a draft, and it would again additionally go back out to member agencies to ensure each member agency had the ability to readdress and re-vote on the new language that a singular member agency may propose. Yeah, so in theory, the process would be, it would come back again just like it would tonight. You guys would approve it, and then it would go back out to member agencies for an additional approval and come back to the board after that.
So I will add that we would discourage prolonging that kind of process. Right now, under the existing joint powers agreement, it requires 4 of you to approve an amendment. And I think we want all of you to approve this. We don't want to have any jurisdictions that are unhappy with a revision of this magnitude. And if it does need time to sort out, whatever suggestions are brought forward, then that is definitely within the board's discretion to decide if it wants to take the time and revisit it. But given that all of the member agency staff seemed very favorable about this, and Eric did a wonderful job explaining the overview. When you look at the red line version that was in the packet, it's a little intimidating, but that's really just simply the formatting and pulling out the old language that's not applicable anymore. So, hopefully everybody has been informed at the staff level about what is needed in this. And then to address Director Wilson's comment about the 2 agencies that are not yet members, the addition of the requirement over flow control for the designated source separated materials is the same requirement that exists now over solid waste. So all of the 6 members have given flow control over their collected solid waste to the authority, and that because it's a consolidation of the tonnage, it allows for then a economy of scale and a better rate for hauling. And so that is the goal with the organics processing. The more tonnage that's consolidated, ultimately, the cheaper the capital improvement or the hauling and processing costs will be. And so, you know, the two jurisdictions that are maybe thinking about joining would definitely contribute to the consolidation of tonnage. And it would be mutual to them as well as to us, but they have the two components. And this is maybe addressing the question from, if she's still on the line, the Trinidad City, I don't see her anymore, Trinidad City Council member, that you have to establish flow control over both solid waste and over the organic designated source separated materials. Sorry to be a little long-winded.
Thanks, General Counsel Diamond. Director Jones.
Yes, hi. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm still getting an echo here. But my question is, tonight, should we pass the preliminary changes to the JPA? Is there action needed tonight?
Yes. There's a recommended motion, I believe, to.
That's correct. I can read it for you, Chair, if you'd like.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So the recommended action is that the board review, discuss, and approve proposed amendments to the HWMA Joint Powers Agreement. Additionally, establish a process to amend this agreement and circulate to HWMA's member agencies for consideration and approval.
Then I so move.
Thanks, Director Jones.
I can second that.
There's a motion by Director Jones, seconded by Director Matthews. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, then we will take a vote. Director Jones.
Yes.
Director Matthews.
Yes.
Director Katie.
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Director Madrone.
Yes.
Great. Motion. Oh, Director Castellano. Yes. Motion passes unanimously. And we will move on to our next item, which is Executive Advisory Committee recommendation related to the organics grant. Okay. And sorry, my papers are really disorganized here. Okay. Oh, and I'll just hand the floor over to you, Interim Director Keller Heckman.
Thank you. At the request of the City of Eureka, the Executive Advisory Committee met on Monday, February 6th to discuss potential CowerCycle grant opportunities and pathways for application. As noted earlier in this meeting, HWMA staff is in the late stages of developing an RFP for organics processing and related construction bid documents for infrastructure improvements, and was anticipating using capital improvement plan funding with additional funding from reserves as needed. Because of this and the anticipated application timeframe, HWMA staff has limited capacity to complete this application. The City of Eureka has offered to take the lead on developing the grant application, and member agencies have agreed tacitly to cost shares. Staff recommends that the HWMA support the Executive Advisory Committee recommendation, and that I would be happy to answer any questions about that recommendation.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I just really appreciate that you found this grant and hustled to bring it to us and even got it to the executive committee before even bringing it to us. So some more details on this grant. Would it be enough to pay for some of the things that we allocated money to, like the redoing of the thing, the tip floor, and whatnot?
Yeah, so it is projected to not only cover the proposed facility retrofits that were presented in November, but additionally will cover the costs of a potential pre-processing unit at the organics facility.
Yeah, I really, really like the idea of getting that pre-processing mixer, especially after watching the video that Director Duffy shared with us with all of that tonnage being shipped somewhere else just to add even more is a lot. So with this preprocessor, it can get our organic waste down to like 30% of it. What is that? Am I making sense? Like that preprocessor, how much will it cut down on the amount that we have to truck out?
So the general accepted number is there's a reduction of around 30%, and that's due to the contamination rates that are generally seen in commercial generated food waste. So the reduction through that process is generally accepted at around a 30% reduction, and that is simply because of its ability to remove contamination from the commercial waste stream or the commercial food waste stream.
Excellent. Do we have a good chance of getting this grant? Do you know?
I obviously I cannot comment on that. I believe that we have a good team that will be working on this grant. We are in a rural area. We do not have infrastructure currently. All of those things bode well, but obviously it is a competitive grant, so it can never be assured.
Yeah, that's just really excellent news, and hopefully it will also help us maybe find even another site so we don't have to truck it all out. Just being able to keep it all in county would absolutely be ideal.
Yeah, and it warrants a tip of the hat to City of Eureka and the Executive Advisory Committee as a whole for working together to figure out a pathway that not only fits within everyone's procurement process, but the public process as well, and ensuring that the short timelines for this potential application could be met. So yeah, it was a